3 experiences with the entity I have come to call the Shadow Man. He lurks in my nightmares and is always in the back of my mind when I am in the dark. My first experience was when I was around 8 years old. I have always been a poor sleeper, and this night was no exception. Around 2 in the morning, I realized I needed to go to the bathroom. I slipped out of my bed and tiptoed to the washroom, hoping not to wake anyone up. As I reached the bathroom, I was confronted by a tall figure shrouded by darkness. It was clearly that of a man, but no features were distinguishable. I was shocked, but I couldn't utter a single noise. I just stood there. He reached out his hand, and with a long, slender finger, he began to beckon me toward him. I couldn't move. I tried to see if I could recognize a face. Maybe it was my father up at night. The figure said nothing. It only beckoned. After some time, I worked up the nerve to turn on the light. With the flip of a switch, the figure was gone. I remember fleeing to my parents' room, crying that I had seen a monster. But I was hushed and told that the dark was playing tricks on me. Maybe it was. 4 years later, we visited my great-uncle's farm. It was no longer a functional farm, but my brother and I used to like it and play in the old hayloft and search around for skeletons of long-dead cats. A morbid hobby, maybe, but certainly seemed fun at the time. After a long day of playing in the hayloft, we were getting ready to leave. It was late in the afternoon, and my parents were eager to get home for some supper. As we were leaving, I looked back at the barn, and in the highest window, at the top of the old building, I could make out the figure of a man. No discernible features, just a shadowy figure. I felt like it was looking directly at me. There was movement. It was beckoning me. Fear slithered up my spine. I knew that for a person to be standing in the front of the barn, I knew that there was no floor in front of that window. Whoever it was, it had to be hovering in thin air. I knew my parents wouldn't believe me. I was not sure if I believed it myself. About 2 years ago, I had my most recent experience with the Shadow Man. As I had mentioned before, I am a poor sleeper. As I got older, I started to develop sleep paralysis. I would feel like my body was finally starting to drift off, and something overwhelming terror would come over me. I would try to move or scream, but I was unable to. I was conscious, but temporarily trapped in my own body. I would get these sensations from time to time. They would frighten me, until that night. It was late. I was lying in my bed, hoping to drift off soon. I could feel the sleep beginning to creep up my limbs. My breathing was becoming regular and restful. My eyes were getting heavy. The numbness of sleep was finally starting to envelop me. As my eyes began to flutter before retiring to the night, I saw him, standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me. I cannot believe his eyes, but I know he was looking at me. I tried to move, to shake myself into wakefulness, but the sleep paralysis has taken over. I am aware of my surroundings, but unable to do anything. He begins to crawl up my bed toward me. I can feel the pressure, but I can't move. I try to scream. I try to escape, but I'm frozen. His face is soon inches from mine. I stare into nothingness. Now I realize I didn't see any eyes. There were no features. I couldn't get away. My heart was racing. I felt sick to my stomach. I urged myself to get out of my paralytic state. I shot up from my bed, and he's gone. I look around my room. I must have been dreaming. That could not have been real. I settle myself back down. My tired mind must have just been playing tricks on me. I lay down in my bed. I was okay. I felt the odd sensation that someone was in my room. I chalked that up to the nightmarish experience. I started to feel sleep take over my body again. Just as my body is ready to submit to my old, overwhelming exhaustion, I hear it, rocking in the chair in my corner of the room, rocking back and forth, back and forth. He's back. I was introduced to the Slender Man a few months ago when some guy wanted to pull a prank on my friend. He asked for my help, but I didn't follow along and just left. He wanted to scare my friend with a Slender Man costume. I looked up the Slender Man and read through all the mythos, ignoring the "do not look deeply into this legend or he will find you" warnings, and went on to marble horns. I love the story and everything, but I felt a little uneasy feeling at night. I might have been psyching myself out, but then weird things started happening. My parents said I would be awake and talking to them 4 hours before I actually woke up. They'll say I do things that I didn't do, like make tea, or something weird and out of the normal. I wonder if they told the truth. My parents are honest people, and I believe them, but it's impossible. A couple nights ago, I felt like I was being watched. Uncharacteristically, I looked out my window and saw a flash of white and black. That night, I had a dream. I drew on a sheet of paper that I saw in the dream. I remember drawing this, and I'm glad I did, because I had forgotten the dream. I recognize this, and my reaction time is slower, along with my memory getting shorter each day. I drew an operator symbol and taped it over my door, and since then I had not had any experiences. The only thing is that I, being 16, have never in my life had a stuffy nose, yet recently it has always been clogged, followed by major headaches that Tylenol can't treat. I don't know what's been up, but I still feel like I'm being watched. Sometimes the phone shuts off and my TV goes static, followed by a headache. Something very strange happened to me last night. Something I still can't quite understand. It was about 9:55 last night when it happened. It was about time for me to get into bed, so I took my 10-year-old mutt, Daisy, out for our last bathroom break for the night. I've been having problems with mild slender sickness, namely nausea, severe headaches, and extreme paranoia. So I knew he'd been following me again. I watched Daisy trot off into the dark. Then the weight set in. I knew he was watching me. I couldn't tell from where. I had my back to the street for a few seconds while I tried to pinpoint my observer's position. Then I remember where I saw him last time. He stood beneath the street lamp across from my home, which was directly behind me. I turned around to see him there, watching me. I froze, just as I had last time, but a bit inside of my cheek from screaming. My mother was still inside and awake, so I couldn't call out and draw her from safety. My eyes grew wide as a panic shot through me like a lightning bolt. My muscles coiled and my heart began racing. I stood like this for maybe 5 or 10 seconds before I blinked. What happened next was a little bit too much for me to comprehend. In the split second it took me to open my eyes, he had suddenly crossed the street and came to the tiny strip I was standing in and stood only inches from me. In my cold state, I was mildly surprised after turning this over that I didn't jump backwards. Still, there he was, hunched over, face level with mine. The weight of his eyeless gaze had me locked in this place, it seemed. I was so scared. I could feel his lump of vomit rising in my throat. I think I tried to move, but I'm not entirely sure. Then it happened. My eyes were drawn to a bit of motion near the lower right of my vision. A pale, thin hand drew up. His icy fingers grazed downward across my face. The feeling was one I could not only describe as cold. Mind you, it's April in Tampa, Florida. What I felt was definitely fingers, for it was too warm to be anything else. I closed my eyes tight, expecting to wake up in the sight of the pearly gates or something. But when I opened them, I saw the light across the street. Daisy trotted back up to me and gave a small yip. She did that whenever she was ready to go inside. It was over, just like that. Lately, I have been staying up until about 3 to 4 in the morning, reading stories until my eyes can no longer hold themselves up. I have also been reading about the Slender Man and learning more and more about him. Yeah, I know, it's not a good idea, but anyway, after discovering what the Slender Man was, I have been really paranoid. I feel like I'm always being watched everywhere. Just 2 nights ago, around 2:45 in the morning, I was laying down on the couch watching TV and texting my friend when I heard the gate to the backyard open. No, we were having some remodeling going on in the front part of our house, so we couldn't use the front door. We had to go to the side gate. After you enter through the side gate, you walk about 25 feet. To the left is your patio and a pool. A sliding glass door leads to the living room to the patio. Next to the living room is the kitchen. Anyways, after the gate opened, I heard footsteps. It sounded like the person was dragging their feet. The blinds to the glass door were closed, and I was getting really paranoid. I told my friend that someone was at the door, and he jokingly responded, "It's the Slender Man, he's going to get you," but after that, I got even more scared. I turned the TV louder and tried to ignore whatever it was, until about 2 minutes later I heard something heavy get thrown into the pool. After that, I just couldn't take it anymore. I went to my bed, wanting to forget what just happened. Now, I'm home alone. It's 10:30 at night, and my mom won't be back until around 3 in the morning. I'm hearing lots of noises and activity going on outside. I've also noticed earlier today that a few things were missing from our yard. The noises keep getting louder, and I'm really scared now. I'm sitting in my room, tucked in the corner with my blinds closed and my door locked. I keep getting the feeling that something is watching me. All the doors and windows are locked in my house, and all the blinds are closed. The noises from outside are still going on, and I'm not sure what to do. In Waukesha, Wisconsin, Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weir, both 12 years old, invited their friend over the night before the 2 girls tried to kill him. The friend was stabbed 19 times. She was stabbed because Geyser and Weir believed that the Slender Man would appreciate their work. The friend was left for dead, but she survived her many stab wounds. She crawled out of the forest and was spotted by passerbys. This story unlike the rest of these stories, this one is confirmed and is true. It caught the national spotlight as the mythical creature was to blame for their actions. Geyser and Weir were eventually arrested and tried as adults. Their former friend had recovered since then. Geyser and Weir could possibly face 65 years in prison if convicted. They remain in custody as we speak.